Amelie sat on the cold bathroom floor, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ear. The tiny stick in her shaking hands showed 2 bright pink lines. For a second, she just stared, unable to breathe. Then she whispered, "Oh God, I'm really pregnant." Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't all from fear. For months, she and Sibusiso had talked about their future. A small house, a baby someday, maybe even a wedding by the beach. He always said he wanted to be a father, that he'd be the kind who changes diapers and makes breakfast on Sundays. So even though her hands trembled, a quiet joy spread through her chest. Maybe this was meant to be. She wiped her eyes, stood up, and looked at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked different, softer somehow, like she was seeing herself as someone's mother for the first time. She smiled a little, then laughed through the tears. By the time she left the bathroom, she already had a plan. That night, she'd cook Sibusiso's favorite meal, light a few candles, and surprise him. She even thought about wrapping the pregnancy test in a little box with a ribbon, something simple but meaningful. Before that, though, she wanted to tell her best friend, Zanil. She grabbed her phone, texted, "I need to see you. Big news." Then she slipped on her shoes, heart light and full of hope. As she stepped outside, she had no idea her entire world was about to change forever. Amelie wanted the night to be perfect. She spent the whole afternoon cleaning her little apartment, humming quietly as she worked. The smell of oxtail stew filled the kitchen, Sibusiso's favorite. She wanted everything to feel warm and full of love, just like the moment she planned to share her news. She set the table carefully, placing 2 candles in the center and a small box beside her plate. Inside that box was the pregnancy test, wrapped neatly in tissue paper. She imagined Sibusiso's face when he opened it, the surprise, the joy, maybe even tears. The thought made her smile. Before getting dressed, she stood in front of her closet, unsure what to wear. After a few minutes, she picked a soft, peach-colored dress that hugged her gently at the waist. It wasn't fancy, but it made her feel beautiful. She added a bit of lip gloss, brushed her hair, and checked her reflection. "You've got this," she whispered to herself. When she finally sat down to catch her breath, her phone buzzed. A message from Sibusiso lit up the screen. "I'll come with my brother Lindo. Hope that's okay." Amelie froze for a moment, her smile fading. Lindo. He was always around, funny, loud, and too comfortable in her space sometimes. There were moments he made jokes that crossed the line, but she'd learned to laugh them off. He was Sibusiso's brother after all. Still, tonight was supposed to be just for the 2 of them. She stared at her phone, thinking of how to reply. For a second, she considered saying no. But then she told herself not to overthink it. Maybe Sibusiso didn't want to drive alone. Maybe Lindo would leave early. She took a deep breath and texted back, "Sure, that's fine." As the clock moved closer to 7, she added an extra plate and glass to the table. The candles flickered softly, filling the room with a golden glow. Everything looked perfect, but something inside her felt slightly off, a quiet unease she couldn't name. She tried to shake it off, focusing on the happy moment ahead. She pictured Sibusiso's smile when she handed him the box, how he'd lift her up and say, "We're going to be parents." The thought made her heart race with excitement. Just before the doorbell rang, she lit the last candle and stepped back to take it all in. The meal, the lights, the smell of home. For a moment, it felt like a dream coming true. But as she adjusted the plates one last time, a strange feeling crept up her spine, something that whispered quietly in her chest. Something's not right. Still, she pushed it aside and smiled, ready to welcome the man she loved, completely unaware that before the night ended, everything she believed about him would start to fall apart. When the doorbell finally rang, Amelie's heart jumped. She smoothed her dress and opened the door to see Sibusiso and Lindo standing there, laughing loudly. The smell of beer hit her before their words did. Sibusiso grinned, his eyes a little glazed. "Baby, something smells amazing," he said, giving her a quick hug. Lindo followed behind, flashing his usual wide smile that never quite reached his eyes. Amelie forced a polite smile. "Come in," she said softly, trying to hide her disappointment. She had imagined a quiet, romantic dinner, not this. Still, she told herself to stay calm. Tonight was supposed to be about love and new beginnings, not frustration. They sat down, and she served the oxtail stew she had worked so hard on. Sibusiso started talking about his day at work, laughing at his own stories, while Lindo added his own jokes, always a little louder than needed. Every now and then, Amelie caught him staring at her, not in a kind or brotherly way, but with something strange in his eyes. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her food, but it made her skin crawl. At one point, Lindo leaned back and said, "Amelie, you really outdid yourself tonight." His tone sounded teasing, almost mocking. Sibusiso chuckled, not noticing how uncomfortable she looked. "She always does," he said proudly. After dinner, just as Amelie was about to bring out dessert, Sibusiso's phone rang. "It's work," he said quickly, standing up. "I'll just step outside." He walked to the balcony, leaving his phone pressed to his ear. Amelie began clearing the plates, humming softly to keep herself busy. Her mind was racing. She wanted to find the right time to give him the surprise, but with Lindo there, it didn't feel right anymore. As she rinsed a plate at the sink, she heard voices from the balcony. Sibusiso's low at first, then Lindo's. She wasn't trying to listen, but when she heard her own name, she froze. "She's pregnant, bro," Lindo said, his voice a quiet whisper. Amelie frowned, confused. How did he know? Her chest tightened. Then came the next words, the ones that made her world tilt. "And you know I'm the real dad." Everything inside her went still. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. But then she heard Sibusiso's voice, low and tense, saying something she couldn't make out. Her vision blurred. The plate in her hand slipped and shattered on the floor. The sound made both brothers turn sharply toward her. Lindo's smirk faded. Sibusiso's face went pale. Amelie stood there trembling, her hands shaking, the water still running in the sink. The only sound in the room was the slow dripping from the tap and her own heartbeat, loud and broken. Lindo stepped back into the apartment as if nothing had happened, hands in his pockets, a casual grin on his face. Amelie's hands were still trembling, gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. "Say it again," she demanded, her voice barely more than a whisper, but sharp enough to cut through the tension. Lindo smirked, leaning against the doorframe. "You heard me," he said, almost teasingly, as if this were some sick joke. Sibusiso walked back in from the balcony, phone in hand, looking confused. His smile faltered when he saw Amelie standing there, her face pale and eyes wide. She turned to him, her voice breaking. "What does he mean he's the real dad?" Sibusiso froze, his eyes darting between her and Lindo. He opened his mouth, closed it, and tried again, but the words caught in his throat. The room went silent, the only sound the faint clinking of a glass on the table as Amelie's fingers shook against it. Lindo shrugged and muttered, almost lazily, "Ask him." Amelie's stomach dropped. Her heart raced, each beat louder than the last. Sibusiso opened his mouth, tried to speak, but it was clear from the guilt written all over his face that denial wasn't an option. She took a step back, stumbling slightly, her breath coming in short gasps. The reality hit her like a wave. The man she loved, the person she trusted, and the brother she thought was harmless had shattered her life in one whispered sentence. Her mind spun, replaying every memory with him. The dinners, the late-night walks, the plans they had made together. Every promise now seemed like a lie. Every moment felt tainted. Amelie pressed her hands to her face, tears stinging her eyes. She felt her world crumble, slowly, painfully, as if it were a film playing in slow motion. She wanted to scream, to hit something, to make this nightmare end. But no sound came out. Sibusiso stepped closer, reaching for her hand, but she flinched away. Her trust, her love, her heart, all of it felt broken beyond repair. For a long moment, the three of them stood frozen, the weight of the truth pressing down like a physical force. Amelie's chest ached. She had thought this night would be filled with happiness, celebration, and new beginnings. Instead, it had become the night she discovered betrayal so deep it left her breathless. And in that silence, with broken plates and scattered memories around her, she realized that nothing would ever be the same again. Amelie stumbled out of the apartment barefoot, the cold pavement burning under her feet. Tears streaked down her face, hot and unstoppable, as her chest heaved with anger and heartbreak. She couldn't even begin to process what had just happened. The betrayal wasn't just from Sibusiso, the man she loved, but from Lindo, someone she had considered family. Every trust she had placed in them felt like it had been ripped away in an instant. Sibusiso followed quickly, his voice pleading. "Amelie, please. It was a mistake. It happened before we were official." She whirled around, her voice cracking as she screamed. "You made me believe we were building a future." Her words echoed down the quiet street, mixing with the sounds of honking cars and distant voices. Neighbors peeked out of windows, curiosity written on their faces, but she didn't care. Nothing mattered except the fire burning in her chest and the betrayal she could not forgive. Her hands shook as she pushed past him and ran back into the apartment. She grabbed her bag, stuffing in her few essentials, clothes, her phone, and a notebook she always carried. Sibusiso reached out again, but she stepped around him, her resolve firm. She didn't look back. Not once. The night was heavy and humid as she made her way to a small, cheap hostel downtown. The room was nothing like her home. A single bed, thin sheets, the hum of a broken fan. But it was quiet, and it was safe. She sank onto the bed, hugging her knees to her chest, staring at the ceiling. The city sounds outside were muted, distant. In the darkness, she whispered to herself, voice raw and small, "I'm carrying a child whose father might be a liar." The words tasted bitter on her tongue, but in saying them aloud, she felt a sliver of clarity. She didn't know what the future would hold, or how she would face the next day. But for the first time since discovering the betrayal, she felt a tiny spark of control. She could protect herself, protect her child. Her tears eventually slowed, leaving her with only the soft hum of the fan and the quiet rhythm of her own heartbeat. She closed her eyes, thinking about the baby growing inside her, imagining a life that didn't have to include the people who had broken her. Tonight was just the beginning of picking up the pieces, a life she would have to rebuild stronger and smarter than before. A few days later, Amelie was finishing her shift at the hospital when she heard someone call her name. She turned and saw Lindo standing in the hallway, hands shoved deep in his pockets, his usual confidence replaced by a nervous shuffle. "I didn't mean for you to find out like that," he said quickly, his voice low, almost pleading. "But it's true, we were together once. He only got with you because I told him I liked you first." Amelie felt her stomach twist. Her knees went weak, and for a moment she had to grip the edge of the nurse's station just to stay standing. Every memory she had of Sibusiso and Lindo now felt like a cruel joke. The dinners, the laughter, the late-night talks about their future, all of it a lie. Her chest tightened with a cold, sickening realization. She looked at him, her eyes sharp, her voice cutting through the hum of the hospital. "You and your brother destroyed more than trust," she said slowly, each word deliberate. "You destroyed my peace." Lindo opened his mouth, probably to apologize, to explain, but Amelie had already made up her mind. There were no words that could fix what they had done. She turned on her heel and walked away, each step steady and deliberate, leaving him frozen in the hallway, speechless. As she passed the nurses and patients, the hospital's usual noise faded into the background. Her mind replayed every betrayal, every broken promise, but for the first time, she felt a spark of something else: clarity, strength, and resolve. She didn't need their excuses. She didn't need their apologies. By the time she reached the locker room, she took a deep breath and let it out slowly, her hands still trembling but her shoulders set straighter than before. She was done letting them have any power over her. Whatever had happened, whatever lies had been told, she would move forward, for herself and for the child growing inside her. Lindo remained in the hallway, frozen, while Amelie left him behind, walking into a future she would face on her own terms. The hospital's fluorescent lights felt harsher now, but they also made her feel awake, alert, and more determined than ever to protect her peace, her life, and the little life she carried with her. Amelie sat in the small ultrasound room, the quiet hum of the machine filling the space. She was alone, as she had decided she wanted it to be, away from the chaos of Sibusiso and Lindo. Her hands rested on her lap, fingers twisting together nervously. The doctor smiled at her warmly. "Your baby is healthy," he said, his voice gentle. Amelie forced a small smile, but her heart felt heavy. The words should have brought her joy, but all she could think about was everything that had gone wrong. The lies, the betrayal, the broken trust. Then the image appeared on the screen, tiny, flickering, almost unreal, and something shifted inside her. A deep, fierce love blossomed in her chest. It wasn't about Sibusiso or Lindo. It was about this little life, growing quietly, completely dependent on her. Her heart ached, but in a different way now, not from pain but from love. Pure, protective love. For the first time, she realized she didn't need either of them. She could do this alone. The thought was liberating, terrifying, and empowering all at once. She made a quiet promise to herself, a vow she felt deep in her bones. She would raise this baby on her own terms. No interference, no lies, no compromise. That night, back in the small safety of her apartment, Amelie sat with her phone in her hand. She stared at the contacts of Sibusiso and Lindo, two people who had once been so central to her life. With a steady breath, she deleted their numbers and blocked them on everything: calls, messages, social media. She didn't need reminders of betrayal. She didn't need the weight of their choices dragging her down. Her chest felt lighter, but her heart still thumped with fierce determination. This time, she was protecting herself and the little life she carried. This time, she was choosing peace over pain, love over lies. Amelie sat back, fingers tracing the curve of her belly, and whispered softly, "We'll be okay. Just you and me." For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt a quiet sense of hope. The past couldn't touch her anymore. She had been hurt, yes, but she was no longer broken. She was ready to face the world, stronger, wiser, and fiercely protective of the new life that had already begun to change everything. Months later, there was a knock at Amelie's door. When she opened it, she was met with Sibusiso standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers, his eyes wide and anxious. "Amelie, please. I don't care whose baby it is," he said, voice trembling. "I want us back. I want to fix this. I can't live without you." Amelie looked at him steadily, her expression calm, almost cold. She took a slow breath and said, "You care now because you lost control, not because you love me." Her words were quiet but firm, carrying the weight of every hurt, every broken promise. He stepped closer, reaching out his hand toward her belly. I just want to be part of this, he said, voice soft, almost pleading. Amelie stepped back, putting space between them. She would not let him near her or the baby. She looked down for a moment at her growing belly, then back up at him, her voice soft but unwavering. I used to think love was about forgiving, she said. But now I know it's about choosing peace. And I'm choosing peace. Sibusiso opened his mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg more, but Amelie didn't give him the chance. She stepped forward and closed the door gently but firmly in his face. The sound of the latch clicking echoed in the quiet hallway, final and absolute. She leaned against the door for a moment, breathing in deeply. The flowers on the floor behind the door would wither soon, but the lesson she had learned wouldn't. She wasn't angry anymore, not in the way that made her heart ache. She was calm, protected, and focused on the life growing inside her. Amelie pressed a hand to her belly and smiled softly, feeling the baby shift. We're safe, she whispered. We don't need anyone who can't love us right. That night, the apartment was quiet, filled only with the soft sounds of the city outside and the gentle movements of her child. For the first time since all the chaos began, Amelie felt truly free. She had chosen herself, her baby, and a future that belonged to them, not to anyone who had ever betrayed her. The night was stormy, rain hammering against the windows and wind rattling the small apartment. Amelie groaned through another contraction, gripping the edge of the hospital bed. Zanil sat beside her, holding her hand tightly, whispering encouragement and keeping her grounded. You've got this, she said softly. Just breathe, one step at a time. Hours passed like slow, painful seconds. Amelie felt every ache, every wave of pain, but through it all, there was a quiet determination driving her forward. She was not alone. She had prepared for this, not just for herself, but for the little life she carried inside her. Then, finally, there was a sharp cry, a tiny, piercing wail that cut through the storm outside. Amelie wept, not from the pain she had endured, but from the strength she felt surging through her. Her hands shook as the nurses placed the baby in her arms, and for the first time, she could breathe again. She looked down at her daughter, tiny and perfect, and felt her heart expand beyond anything she had ever imagined. Ayanda, she whispered, the name feeling right in her mouth. It means they grow. You'll grow. We'll grow. Everything starts fresh today. The storm outside seemed to soften as she held her daughter close. She ran her fingers over the baby's soft skin, feeling the rapid, steady heartbeat against her chest. We don't need anyone who can't love us right, she murmured, her voice low but firm. The past, Sibusiso, Lindo, the lies, the betrayal, all of it faded into the background. It didn't matter anymore. In that small hospital room, Amelie felt a peace she hadn't known for months. Every fear, every tear, every sleepless night had led to this moment. She rocked Ayanda gently, whispering little promises to her, vowing to protect her, to love her, and to guide her. The world outside was stormy, but inside, there was calm, warmth, and a new beginning. Amelie realized she didn't need anyone else to define her happiness or safety. All that mattered now was her daughter, her life, and the fierce love that would carry them both through everything that lay ahead. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the exhaustion wash over her, but smiled through it. Ayanda's tiny fingers curled around her, and in that instant, Amelie knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, a mother, strong, free, and ready for everything that came next. A year had passed, and Amelie's life had changed completely. She and Ayanda had moved to Cape Town, far from the memories that had once hurt her so deeply. Amelie was thriving, working in a busy private clinic, laughing more, and feeling freer than she had in years. The small apartment they shared was full of sunlight, toys, and the sounds of Ayanda's constant chatter. One afternoon, while Amelie was preparing a snack for her daughter, her phone buzzed. She picked it up and saw a message from Lindo. Can I meet my child? She stared at it for a long moment, her chest tightening, but she didn't feel fear anymore. She looked over at Ayanda, who was playing by the window, her small hands pressing against the glass as she watched the birds outside. Her daughter's laughter rang out like music in the room, pure and innocent. Amelie typed back slowly, deliberately. You had your chance to be a man. Now I'm the only parent she needs. She deleted the message immediately, a sense of finality washing over her. Lindo would not have the power to hurt them anymore. Not now, not ever. She stepped outside, carrying Ayanda on her hip, feeling the warm breeze on her face. The city smelled of the ocean, of salt and life, and for the first time in a long while, Amelie felt completely at peace. Ayanda giggled, reaching out to touch the leaves of a nearby tree, and Amelie's heart swelled. They broke my heart trying to claim me, she thought as she watched her daughter. But I built a life no one can take away. Amelie smiled softly, holding Ayanda close. The past was behind them. Their future was theirs alone, full of love, laughter, and a freedom that no betrayal could ever steal.